baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into On Deck. As always, thank you so much for checking out the channel. Really do appreciate it. While you're here, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on all across Major League Baseball and, of course, with your Atlanta Braves, who made a couple of moves yesterday. No real blockbusters here, but still some interesting moves nonetheless. Let's go ahead and go down the transaction list for July 24th, 2023, starting out with the trade for Pierce Johnson with the Colorado Rockies. The Atlanta Braves would trade Victor Vodnik and Tanner Gordon, a couple of pitching prospects, in the Atlanta Braves organization before yesterday, and of course they land right-handed pitcher Pierce Johnson. Secondly, the Texas Rangers would trade with the Braves left-handed pitcher Taylor Hearn. The Atlanta Braves would exchange cash in that deal, and the corresponding moves to those would be that the Braves would designate right-handed pitcher Derek Rodriguez for assignment and also designate left-handed pitcher Lucas Litke for assignment as well. Lastly, the Braves do sign free agent right-handed pitcher Cody Wiley to a minor league contract. So let's break this down for a second, because I can tell you that the Braves made these moves, but what's the real impact? Is this supposed to be what the Braves do ahead of the trade deadline? And secondly, do I think they're done? We're going to get into all of that right now, but let's go ahead and break each and every one of these guys down, starting out with Pierce Johnson. Pierce Johnson, out of all three of these guys, is the guy that I think actually could really be an impactful presence with the Braves. And he might not be your closer, I don't think that at all, but I think he could be a very solid back end of the bullpen guy. So let's talk about him for a second. Number one, the thing that's going to stick out, the thing that's going to make you comment negatively about this is his ERA. He's got a 6 ERA. However, do keep in mind he's been playing half of his games in Coors Field. That's not good for anybody. I really think getting him out of Coors Field and putting him into Truist Park could be a major factor in turning him around. If you don't believe me, let's look at some deeper cut stats for a second. Yes, he has a 6 ERA, but his expected ERA is only 4.59. Plus, he's got a 2.31 FIP on the road. And if you don't know what FIP is, allow me to give you just a quick explanation. Basically, the goal of FIP is to take ERA, but make it more under what the pitcher can control. Home runs, strikeouts, walks. He's got a really good FIP on the road, and that I think is more representative of what he could be for the Braves. You get him out of Colorado, you put him in Atlanta, and you limit how much air density the guy's got to deal with. He does have 13 saves, although that was earlier this season. I don't believe he will be a closer. I think he's a guy that will be on the back end of the bullpen. We may see him sooner rather than later, though. The Braves are going to want to explore who he is and what he can bring to the team sooner rather than later. They're going to want to know what he can be prior to July 31st and, of course, the trade deadline. A couple of interesting stats that I found. He has faced 117 batters so far this season, striking out 58 of them. For perspective, that's about 50% of the batters he has faced have striken out. His strikeouts per nine, 13.4. That's very good. His walks per nine, 4.7. I think he can kind of get that down. And honestly, I think working with the Braves organization as opposed to the Colorado Rockies organization could affect him. His career numbers are better than the stats he's put up this season. That is a positive thing. And I really think Coors Field plays a factor here. And that's not everything. I think there is also development that needs to come. But there's no reason to think that the Braves are wrong to take a chance on him. His whiff rate is high. He's got solid fastball velocity. And I really think getting him out of Colorado and giving him a change of scenery is going to be a good step. Alex Anthopoulos had this to say when it comes to Pierce Johnson. Quote, "When you get to this time of year, you're thin slicing quite a bit. It's just kind of the reality of it. I know that the numbers on the surface right now aren't great, but he's still getting a lot of swing and miss. And look, there's no doubt Coors Field, all that stuff. We think there's upside there for him to improve, and obviously we are optimistic that he'll do it for us." And I'll be honest with you, I'm right there with Alex Anthopoulos on this one because, look, when you just go look at his baseball reference page, you see the ERA stick out. 6 ERA kind of makes you go, no thank you. But then you get into the deeper stats. You hear that Coors Field really might be an impact on this guy's numbers. And when you also hear that he's striking out 50% of the guys he's faced, that's a pretty good sign. Taylor Hearn, of course, he's the left-handed pitcher from the Rangers that the Braves did acquire for cash and cash alone. His ERA is not going to jump off the page either. Right now, it's a 10.29 ERA through the majors this year. However, he was optioned to AAA, where he was 2-2 on the year in the minors with a 3.66 ERA in 24 appearances. The real story behind him is his lack of control. 104 walks over 229 innings. It's right around 15% of batters are walking. And when you put runners on the bases, it's not going to add up. Alex Anthopoulos had this to say, quote, "He's got a great arm, a power arm. We'll see him get in the strike zone a little bit more. But the fact is, he's got big stuff. He has experience starting. He's a nice piece for us to take a shot at." And the real plus, in my opinion, is that he's a left-handed pitcher and he's got some options. The Braves, of course, are really lacking in that department in terms of left-handed pitching in general, but especially left-handed pitching when it comes to the bullpen. A.J. Minter is on the IL right now, and he was the only left-handed reliever. So this is a real plus for the Braves to get him, and if he doesn't turn into much, the Braves only expended cash in landing him. And, of course, the last guy we got to talk about, right-handed pitcher Cody Whitley. He has not pitched for a big league club in 2023. He was last with the Cardinals in 2022, where he did have a 5.38 ERA through 12 and 2/3 innings pitched. Very similar numbers in 2023 for him at the minor league level. 5.19 ERA through 43 1/3 innings pitched. Nothing that really jumps off the page. His strikeout per 9 is high. He's got a 10 strikeout per 9. The strikeout per walk rate is high as well, 369. So it could be that the Braves see something they can work with, and again, taking a real chance on him. And I got to be honest with you, at this point with the Braves, I'm not against taking a chance, and here's why. Number one, these moves are made for depth. They are not something that I think the Braves are necessarily counting on. There's something that the Braves are looking around and going, well, what could we just kind of bolster? Where could we add some reinforcements? Depth moves are also made for 3 reasons. Number one, purely taking a chance. Pierce Johnson, I think, is a perfect example of that. With his numbers outside of Coors Field, plus the development that seems to come with being in Atlanta, I think there's a chance for him to be a solid arm on the back end of the bullpen. We'll, of course, monitor that and see where it goes. The second reason that you make these depth moves is you're assuming the worst, right? Where is the worst case this could go? A.J. Minter, for example, is making his first rehab appearance tonight. But what happens if he can't return? What happens if another injury comes up? The Braves would enter the last leg of the season without a lefty reliever at all, not to mention the postseason. The addition of Hearn provides a chance at adding another that costs little, and of course he also has options if it doesn't work out. Maybe you can develop him further by sending him back down. And the last reason that you make a depth move is this one, in case something else doesn't happen before the trade deadline, in case a move hasn't been made. I told you a few weeks ago that I thought the number one thing the Braves are going to be looking at the trade deadline was bullpen help, specifically lefty bullpen help. And so far, that's been all they've really gone after is relievers, or at least the reliever types. They only got one left-hander, but being that left-handed pitching is really hard to come by right now, that doesn't surprise me. And I think there is a possibility where something else doesn't happen prior to the trade deadline. That doesn't mean that the Braves are not continually looking. And I really think that the Braves are going to be targeting something big, maybe like a Josh Hader. By the way, if you haven't seen it, we did a whole video breaking down the possibility of the Braves landing Josh Hader. I know that's a hot topic now. We were the first on it, so make sure to go check that out. The card is above, and of course the link is also down in the description. Check out the rest of our channel as well, and please do make sure to like and subscribe. So where do the Braves go from here? Are they going to add on more? I would have told you before today that I think so. But Alex Anthopoulos gave me a quote to use, so here we go. Quote, "You know that there's certain times of the year where teams are engaged and they're active in trade. This is one of those times. So there could be a deal that impacts you long term that makes sense right now. When we got Iglesias last year, a part of the appeal was that he had 3 years remaining on his deal and we knew we'd have him going forward. Then there's other times where guys are slated to be a free agent. The trade deadline is next week. We still have a week or so, and like anything, you just always take the time to explore things. To be able to predict is so hard to do because we're not going to force any trades. I do think this is a time of year clearly where all 30 teams are engaged, and it's an opportunity to either improve your roster short term or long term. So there's a lot to unpack there. Number one, I think you need to realize the Braves are not done. They are still actively searching for things to make the team better. And I think every team is doing that in some form or fashion. Some teams are likely out there trying to sell, right? The White Sox, the Cardinals, teams like that are so far out of it they don't have a chance. They want to get money back, right? They're basically returning. But no, I think that's you need to unpack that, but also you also need to realize that there's multiple ways that the Braves can go about this. He mentioned Raisel Iglesias' deal. No one saw that coming last year, mainly because he wasn't a free agent. It's a lot easier for the team that's receiving the player that's actually going to be a positive impact right now, the player that you're offloading. The team that is receiving him, it's usually a free agent at the end of the season if it's a big-time deal that's going to make an immediate impact. That said, that would be Josh Hader right now, no doubt about that. But beyond that, there are other options. You do have teams that have players locked up for a couple more years that are out of it and may not be in it any time in the near future. So teams are maybe offloading stuff really kind of unexpectedly. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Any trade deadline is interesting to watch. But to hear Alex Anthopoulos come out and speak on a few things. Of course, he's not going to try to predict trades. He's not going to tell you who they're going after. That's really what's going on there, and I don't blame him. We can sit here and try to predict, but it's a really tough thing to predict. I really do think the Braves are still actively looking for left-handed pitching. It just would be foolish for them not to. They may be looking for a starter, though I have my really high doubts about that, considering they're getting freed back shortly, and Kyle Wright shouldn't be more than a month away. I think bullpen is where they attack. I've seen some conversations also about the idea of a left field bat, really just a left fielder. Adam Duvall has been one that has come up here lately. I would personally love that if it were to happen. I don't know that that's necessarily the priority. The Red Sox are still technically in a race to make it to the postseason, so there's a lot of ways it could go. But if it did happen, I think Braves country would love it. He was a part of the 2021 World Series team. He hit a grand slam in the World Series. I think it's overlooked. But no, he's been a quality bat on-off for the Braves for a few years. I think it'd be a great deal if the Braves could land him. But I don't know that it's necessarily going to happen. I think Boston would honestly be kind of foolish to let that happen. But beyond that, the Braves are definitely looking around. That's the important thing I think you take from these moves. Yes, there's the potential that Pierce Johnson works out or Taylor Hearn becomes something, next season even. There is that potential, but I think ultimately the key here is that the Braves are far from done in this trade deadline. Whether or not anything does happen, the Braves are not done, at least looking. I think we see a deal before July 31st at the deadline. That said, that's going to wrap it up for your look here at these moves that were made, of course, on July 24th, 2023. Couple of little moves, but hey, any move is worth talking about, right? So if you want to keep up to date with everything going on with the Major League Baseball trade deadline when it comes to the Braves, and of course, maybe your favorite team as well, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here at On Deck, and of course, with your Atlanta Braves. That's going to wrap things up here at On Deck. We'll see you next time.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.